Hello, everybody. It's Scuba here. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode in Mystery School. If you want to check out our full unedited version, please go to our Rumble channel, New Templars Mystery School. All right. Have a wonderful day, guys. For wizardry, dark arts, and witches and warlocks. So basically just kind of the rundown of what we're going to talk about this evening. Granted, there's going to be one topic at the very kind of sprinkled throughout. I don't want to say it's going to be at the end, but it'll be mainly talked about more towards the end, but it's going to be sprinkled pretty much throughout the entirety of the conversation, and that is the Fountain of Youth and how that is obtained. So starting off with our first question of the night, what is a witch and a warlock, and how do they practice such magic? Junk, do you want to take it away?
Yes. Well, hello everybody for our second, and it's our second Halloween episode, correct? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Third. It's our third.
Well,
no, second.
Our third recording, second Halloween episode.
Second Halloween episode. Welcome, welcome. There are more to come throughout the month. I would just like to say, before we start the conversation about witches, warlocks, etc., we should set a foundation, which is, what is magic? Lots of people have a misconception of magic being intertwined with entertainment versus reality, and they are two distinctly different fields. When we talk about more so stage magic, we're talking about illusions, kind of artificial things. But when we talk about real magic, we're talking about more so an organic manifestation of energy. So there is a difference in that both exist. There are people that like to fake magic, but there are real forms of magic, as we will discuss throughout this conversation. And in the slide you can see before you, there has been a lot of indications that magic has been prevalent within society. And we see a lot of imprints of societal magic in the form of mainstream media, as far as movies, television, music goes. And so as you can see here, we have a pretty stark contrast between the full-on demonstration of witchcraft being more so a fun, lighthearted thing, almost cartoony in a sense, versus that would be considered more realistic or darker or more of a, kind of noir type undertone. So Harry Potter, of course, everybody knows this movie. It begins with a kid figuring out he's a wizard, studying witchcraft through a collegiate kind of academy. As you can see, Scoob is Harry Potter himself. We are graced with his presence. Very happy you're here with us, Harry.
Thank you, sir. Happy to be here.
Gryffindor. So we have that representation, which is more of like a family fun kind of thing. And that's a thing. A lot of people, when they talk about wizardry or witchcraft in general, it's more so, oh, it's a fairy tale, it's something of legend. But there are very real indications that witchcraft has been practiced throughout the centuries, if not thousands of years. And so you move on from a lighthearted film such as Harry Potter, and you move on to American Horror Story. I know there's many, many more forms of content all throughout the interwebs and on television that portray witchcraft. These are just a few examples. But you have American Horror Story Coven, which is basically a continuation of the Salem witch trials. It talks about, it's actually set in Salem, so you get that real world kind of contrast, but you also have a really raw element of this, which is kind of a darker undertone that would heavily contrast that of Harry Potter, something that would scare you quite literally. So we have that aspect. Then you move on to more of the lightheartedness, again, back to Hocus Pocus, which is a Disney Channel manifestation. You know, these they like to make it very Halloweeny. When you think of a witch in that regard, it's more so spooky, cauldrons, brooms, etc. Things that are just kind of like themed, kind of like overscaping the true reason that witchcraft really exists, and we'll dive into that. And then off to the right of that, you have Hereditary, which, if any of you have seen that, it's again more of an even darker undertone than American Horror Story. It has very creepy elements. I would probably consider Hereditary the proper demonstration of dark magic. So if you haven't seen it, add it to your list and go check it out if your heart can handle it. It's pretty intense. But just look at the spectrum here. So witchcraft in general has been broadly covered with a paint stroke of happy versus dark, light versus dark, and it's just which version do you truly believe witches or warlocks to exist from? And the answer is both. So take it away, Scoop.
So yeah, one of the most interesting things that I'm, just observing, just by looking at these photos is that, I know from my own personal experience of being a Gen Z type of, an older Gen Z type of person, now knowing that Coven is set in Salem, I just know offhand that Hocus Pocus is also set in Salem, both during the time of the Salem witch trials as well as modern day. Granted, it's very much painting a joke on it, but there are some themes that, I'd say all of these movies kind of get right, but there's definitely a large tone that it's make believe, it's fantasy, it's not trying to tell you what the truth is, it's just trying to be entertainment, whether it be scary or funny, nostalgic, or trying to tell a very, very good in-depth story. So let's go into the real history of them. From what I understand, there's a lot of different practices that isn't well known that witches did just in their daily lives. There was a lot of attire that had to be specifically worn because they believed the garments that they wore held special ability to their own persona, as well as they sometimes acted with, I would say, not malicious intent, but there was a very variety of different people, and during that time, unfortunately, a herbalist could be seen as a witch because, she's basically curing things with herbs, and that's, it's magic. I'm just going to be honest. There's a degree of magic that is science that you don't understand. And to a degree, a lot of their science was not understood, so it was instantly shunned and destroyed. Junk, do you want to jump on a little bit of those ideas?
Yeah. Again, lots of misconceptions in the past, as we've known. The collective consciousness has greatly grown with its understanding of reality. But truthfully, at the very heart of it, the whole purpose of magic is to gain access to the gifts we already possess. So whether this be free will, manifestation, thought forms, etc., all of them kind of consolidate and emanate from what we know to be true. And so witches in general, and again, there is a distinct difference between witches. The ones that are perceived more dark are also contrasted to those that are more light. And again, we'll dive deeper into this, but this whole phenomena really began from the Wiccan culture, which is kind of just a following where it's more holistic, it's more informed with nature, it's kind of a stepping away of society and a perpetration of free will in general, of doing what you want as you will. So as you can see here in these images, very stereotypical, some of them are more realistic and accurate. Again, off to the far right, you can see like an actual painting from the old ages. Yeah, right there. But it's fascinating. We're going to have to definitely dive into Salem because that is where a lot of this kind of formulates. But even before then, access to magic is in essence just an utilization of consciousness. It's a way of directing energy through you to have a desired result. So you can consider witches the medium of this energy, and their ability to formulate or manifest a new reality would be in their own desire and understanding that they can indeed produce such an effect.
I also want to add on the point, Junk recently just talked about Wiccans. One of the big things that Wiccans have that, witches don't necessarily have is sense. Wiccans kind of, veer away from society and do their own thing. Eventually, a lot of them really evolve their own relationship with the planet's consciousness and really kind of invoke, connecting themselves to Mother Gaia versus that service to self dark magic that a lot of witches fall into. So here we have different, we have the basic idea that witches use brooms to fly around. Junk, you might know much more than I do about this one.
Yeah, actually, this is pretty fascinating. The whole concept of them flying on brooms or flying in general, again, invokes the levitation aspect, but also we talked about potions, and some of them have kind of mysterious origins. For example, when I was doing a lot of research, I found that there was this woman. Let me see if I can get her name really quick. Uh, Petronilla de Media and Alice Keitler, both from Ireland, and they were set up on trial again, accused during the witch hunt days, but they basically confessed that they applied a magical potion to wooden beams, which enabled women to fly. This is a confession at her death. So this was back in 1392, or sorry, 1324. So from that concept, again, it's science that we don't understand. What if there is anti-gravitic ways of alchemically producing lift? And I'm not advocating for it, and I'm not arguing against it. I'm being the medium here. I'm being the alternative opinion. But we have to take for a second an instance that this has remained credible for centuries. We see it even today. You don't see a witch without a broom. Take Wizard of Oz, for example. One of the most famous cases of, public understanding is that she's on a broom. And again, Harry Potter. Yeah, it's everywhere. And also, you kind of take about the household element as well. Women working in the kitchen, working in the home. Chances are they would be idolized with a tool of that trade. So that has to play into account too. But if it's just fascinating to think that alchemically you can do something to produce an impossible effect in the physical. So just a little tidbit.
One point I want to add on to, sort of in contrast, is that I guess there are more natural ways you can produce lift. One example would be the monks when they practice in their meditation and chants. They can obtain a certain level of levitation through not necessarily alchemical ways, but perhaps different methods, whether that's channeling the chi and somehow controlling the electrons in your body, or the science beyond our understanding that allows levitation. The whole point is that the concept exists is that they're using some type of force, magic as we call it, to create a physical effect. But not all magic is physical or visible. It can be felt. It can affect you consciously, subconsciously, as we see here in this video that Scuba's about to play. So
I was just you did a very good segue into making this video irrelevant. Junk, would you like to talk about this?
So what you're about to witness is a private viewing of an African voodoo ritual, which again is dark magic, as we know. And they caught something that might disturb you a little bit, which is a man levitating off the ground, just very casually. And Scuba and I have analyzed this video, and while it can be easily said that there's a wire holding them up, you have to realize what part of the world they're in and what kind of machinery they would have, etc. And just for a second, suspend your disbelief. What are you witnessing right now? I mean, honestly, if this is something of a possession, then this should be terrifying. This isn't something to be glorified as you see everybody on the ground with their cell phones. This is pretty horrific. And truthfully, the first time I saw this, I got goosebumps, and not the good ones. Like almost you're seeing something you shouldn't see. And so yeah, this as well as many others. I mean, just imagine witches flying around and having the same effect on you. How do you think the townsfolk would react? And that's kind of where we get that.
And
story.
Watching this video, as continuously as I did when he first sent it to me, watching this video, you're basically watching I would say pretty much the end of the seance circle, which they basically probably did a chant for many, many, many hours to get this effect. And they probably all had to be in synchronous. And when it finally happened, that one guy was already to the point of channeling the energy to where it brought him up. Because one of the big things that these tribes talk about is when they get into their dance circles and they really get in tune with everybody and everything is in sync, magical things like this end up happening, whether it's good energy or dark energy. It's still one of those things that is still up in the air.
Though something I will say about witches on brooms is an argument that I heard was that back in the day, like psychedelic usage wasn't as, known as it is now. So something that they would do is they would grow these psychedelic herbs and they would form them into a kind of paste. And the way that you would consume them is by putting them onto the mucous membranes of your body. So like inside of your mouth, or in the case of some witches, well, women have mucous membranes that are have a lot of blood vessels right in between their legs. So they could rub it on the broomstick and then literally ride off into the night on their psychedelic trips. So it could have a metaphorical kind of usage as well, that they were flying high, but they were still literally on the ground. They were just tripping balls.
And that's a very good point, and something to bring up. There was a lot of use of these different type of psychedelics, I'm sure, with all of these witches basically going out in the woods picking herbs. Andrew, go first, and then Junk.
I would just like to point out, like, what he has on his legs almost looks like a broom, but it's loose.
Yeah.
Maybe he just danced like what you said. Um, Maybe this is different than the witches. I mean, it doesn't look like he has too much control over it, but maybe he just whatever they use on the legs, like
Make it appear.
that the insect wings, how they're hollow or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they use a certain type of reed or something that's hollow, and it just energizes with something. I don't know, but with the witches and everything, like they would at least in the movies. I haven't seen it in real life, but in the movies they would go in a circle and they'd like push their berms around. I don't know what movie it was from, but maybe it was just maybe it was the witch movie, or I think that was Levitation. But yeah, I don't know. Just it's kind of weird how it's like the broom and his legs are like that. I just want to point
Yeah.
that out.
Well,
Completely.
I will say really quick, the earliest known images of witches on brooms dates back to 1451, basically appearing on these illustrations in a French poet's manuscript. Let me look at the name, Martin Lefranc. And in these two drawings, one of the women soars through the air on a broom, and the other one flies aboard on a white plane stick. So again, just as Andrea said, the historical depiction of witches riding broomsticks has its origins in hallucinogenic plant pharmacology, kind of popularized by Shakespeare. But it was it was just interesting because the tropane alkaloid hallucinogens tended to cause them to sleep, which could involve flying, all these kind of trips or psychedelic experiences. But then again, it's interesting to kind of take that approach and then also realize that there were also firsthand accounts. So we don't know. I think it's just absolutely fascinating to ponder, especially for the fact that it's still occurring today. You go into a party city or one of those Halloween stores, you're gonna see a witch on a broom. Like it's just standard. And why is it standard? That's the real question we should be asking.
Before we move on to our next topic, I can kind of tie both of you and Andrew's point together. Is that it could very well be a tool, just like the wand. You know, it's kind of a device that directs our intent, and all magic, good or bad, comes from either from or through us, whether it's ourselves or another entity. And these tools are a way of focusing or enhancing that intent. And speaking of intent, we're going to be moving into uh, is there such a thing as good magic? And before we define that, I do want to give a definition of magic. Magic is the energy that flows within and through all things, which is also known as life or universal energy. And this concept can be found in all different cultures. They may give it different names other than magic, but it is neutral. Magic is potential energy or energy that is static until given purpose. Similarly, electricity is constant and available, but no light can be used until the choice is made to turn on a lamp. Until the practitioner's intent is applied, magic lacks purpose. And in the case of white magic, the practitioner raises and builds upon and works with positive intention. In doing, the pattern of white magic may be altruistic to accomplish good deeds, or it may be proactive in operating for the greater good. Um, White magic is a philosophy of magic. Uh, in white magic, the practitioner has help healing as their goal. It does not intend to harm anything or create obstacles or to do anything like that. There are those who believe specific spells are considered white magic. And from then on, all other types of magic that do not benefit people are considered gray magic and black magic. Um, so if anyone else wants to add on to that, go right ahead.
Actually, I think you really just went right into a beautiful segue into the next topic. I know Andrew's
Before
got
we
a
move on to that, I want to go at another thing, right? So what's one example of white magic that we all can use right now? I'm not talking about that intense magic like levitating, or if you ever see the monks where they light a piece of paper on fire using their chi. What's something that we can all practice? And that's something called Reiki. If you've ever heard of Reiki, that is a form of white magic. It is a spiritual healing art that has its roots in Japanese origin, and it comes from the universal life or ki, the energy. Reiki is defined as the energy that flows through all living things, and practitioners understand that everyone has the ability to connect with their own healing energy to strengthen themselves and to help others. This ki or energy should be strong and free flowing in the person's body and mind in a positive state of health. And that's what kind of helps give that healing. When the energy becomes weak or blocked, it leads to symptoms of physical and emotional imbalance. And that leads into other topics of health that we can save for another session. But Reiki can be used for a number of things, right? So before I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but
You already did, my dude. Yeah, I'm
yes,
trying to tell you. Like
you
you
can fuse
literally went into
Reiki.
it.
You can fuse Reiki into your foods and water to help with healing and digestive issues, to fall asleep, to heal your mind and body. You can also use it to find lost objects. There are rituals you can do to do that. And you can even use it to enhance your physical abilities, as martial artists do, or maybe even people who practice stuff like weight loss and stuff. So it goes to the fundamental thing, mind over matter, but it is a little more complex than just thinking it. Um, yeah, we can move on. I don't want to overwhelm you.
You're not overwhelming me. You just already answered pretty much the next topic. Are all warlocks and witches bad? No, they are not. It's all essentially intention is setting. And Junk, would you like to carry this one or carry on?
Yeah, of course. Well, with the contrast of black and white, we do get benevolence and malevolence. So there is a white magic to the black magic, and magic is neutral. Scoob, I think you said it best, is intention is the divider. It is the driver to which the user of the magic actually, expresses themselves. So as much as we're going to talk about dark magic or black magic in this conversation, I think we should bring some levity with white magic, because this is something that is something, I mean, personally, I've found myself to be using white magic at times because it's a lot less occult than people truly believe it to be. I mean, you heard an example there, but I would say more so manifestation itself is a form of white magic. So don't take anything too seriously as far as like preconceived notions, but start to look at how they actually fit into our own development as spiritual beings. So we've talked about witches, right? I do want to shed some light on the others, because a witch can be a man or a woman. Don't get that twisted. It's not gender specific, but there are warlocks, sorcerers, shamans, druids, magicians, etc. Whatever you want to consider. Everybody has their own classification. Each has their own purpose and intention for using magic. And I believe, just before we go into this, into the warlocks aspect, that white magic is something that you've probably practiced without even realizing it. It's all infused. The best way you can see the polarization aspect is paramount. If it's serving others, if it's a more positive, light felt, more loving energy, chances are it's of white magic. And if it's more self-serving, deteriorating or aggressive or evil, whatever you want to consider that, that would be indicative of black magic. So
two examples of white magic that we might practice every day without knowing. Very simply, prayer is a form of white magic. Affirmations are a form of white magic that ties into manifestation. But yeah, sorry, I just want to interject. You go ahead.
That's a great one.
No, 100%. It is a great one. I would add on another great use of white magic without us even really knowing it is when an artist feels as though they're channeling something. You know, the actual art of channeling from, you know, using the quantum entanglement method of the universe to, you know, connect with somebody out in the stars or something out in the stars. And, you know, whether you channel it through intense dialogue or you create art with it. And, you know, to a degree, I just got to give a shout out. This middle picture is Merlin, and it looks so good, like Palladian good. And it's a very good representation of who Merlin was as far as, you know, somebody who was very influential around that time period. You know, as it's starting to come out now, and as Dylan reported on, they're really starting to find that there's a real King Arthur, and that story isn't so much a fairy tale, and it's really starting to become, you know, not so much folklore, but very in-depth history. And if King Arthur is real, you know, his fight with the dragon, his fight, you know, Merlin teaching him, you know, how to get the sword out of stone and how powerful that really meant, and, you know, what kind of technology that really was. I know I'm going super deep into this, but, you know, just the general idea of Merlin himself and his journey and understanding, you know, who he was outside of what Disney tries to tell you. You know, you're talking about a guy that was very, 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 very ahead of his time. And, you know, I would say up there in the greats of who he's sitting next to in this graphic, Thoth. Because, you know, we look at Thoth as one of the great Egyptian masters. I would say, you know, Merlin is one of the great English masters.
Yeah, and speaking of artists, that's actually another form of magic that is commonly practiced. You can even imbue intent and positive energy into whatever form of art you're doing, whether it's a piece of music, or photo, or just like an ASMR video. And it might not even have to depict anything all too intricate, such as Dylan's light codes. That is a great example of how intention, or even simple ritual, can bring in positivity into you or your energy field, or even if you're not aware of those things, to your space and your environment around you. And another great example of that would be burning sage. Is a simple ritual to clear the negative energies and bring in more positivity. I don't know the quantum or technical explanation of how that works, but if anyone does, they might add in.
Quantum entanglement.
Well,
Junk?
yes, but in a deeper sense.
Junk, would you like to talk about our friends Thoth and Merlin?
Yes, of course. Well, this is an epic saga, as you're seeing before you. Thousands and thousands of years ago, we had this collective consciousness known as Ra, who we've spoken about previously with the Law of One channelings. And Thoth was one of that group that actually physically manifested in ancient Egypt, which was Kemet, and started teaching humanity the truth of the universe and what it meant and what this is all about. And what's interesting too, before I dive into all of this, you've been seeing a lot of crystal iconography. Crystals are very widely used with magic, as they are used with consciousness. With Scoob right there, yeah. Harry Potter has a crystal. You guys, you should go out and get a crystal.
I have many crystals.
But I want to emphasize too, because I found this passage in the Law of One just spontaneously, and it's very synchronistic for tonight. It's basically where Ra describes a crystal. It says, the use of a crystal in physical manifestation is that use wherein the entity of a crystalline nature charges the regularized physical crystal with the seeking, thus enabling it to vibrate harmonically and also become the catalyst or gateway whereby intelligent infinity may thus become intelligent energy, this crystal serving as an analog of the violet ray of the mind-body-spirit complex is relative, undistorted form. And then it says also down here, the uses of the crystal, as you know, include uses, hold on one second. The uses of a crystal, as you know, include the uses for healing, for power, and even the development of life forms. So let that sink into your brain for a second. We're talking about physical things that can come from crystals through the mind, through consciousness, into physicality, which is, absolutely mind-blowing to me. But getting back to our epic saga, we have Thoth, who basically was the teacher, the architect, the master of the time, who brought these wisdoms to humanity, most notably through the Kabbalion, which is basically a composition, a very mysterious composition about the 7 laws of the universe. And it says, the principles of the truth are 7. He who knows these understandably possessed the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. So, sorry for butchering that, but that's basically talking about an unlocking of potential within the wisdoms of Thoth, right? So you have that foundation. Now moving on, Thoth's teachings spread throughout the world. Okay, this wasn't consolidated to Egypt and died in Egypt or was lost to Egypt. There were mystery schools, as the one you're in now, that spread these teachings throughout. And even his own students, it has been known, and there's tales of this, has transcended even to a warlock known as Merlin, as you can see dead center. And Merlin's important because he's the one that has probably the most notoriety as far as the magical presence goes. You've seen him in Disney. You've heard him in, just as Scoop said, the King Arthur tales. But he's doing the exact same thing that Thoth was doing as far as spreading information, practicing white magic openly, and continuing the cycle of inner knowing and self-mastery. Now, even with that coincidental happening, off to the right, you're seeing a depiction of Hermes Trismegistus, which many have entitled Thoth as a synonymous presence of Hermes, and vice versa, Hermes being the Thoth of ancient Greece. So you have all of these 3 presences, again, masculine figures, so you could consider them in the warlock category, but they're all basically touching in with the intelligent infinity, the force of source, and making that manifestation real in their own unique lives and being witnessed by others. And so this is something I find fascinating, because even till modern day, all 3 of these figures are still as prominent as they were in the past. And that has to tell you something. That's how we can really assess the positivity that came from these 3. And don't believe the hype, don't believe the drama that comes with any of it. You have to see the intention behind the words. Are the words meant to encourage you, help you grow, or are they meant to keep you compressed and small? And chances are, a lot of the time, a lot of people have been trying to suppress these truths from the collective for the simple fact that they don't want people to rediscover their own magic, which is why we're here to remind you of today, is that you are a magical being. You are alive. You are a puppet without strings. Okay, that is the most powerful realization that you could possibly have. And then also to realize and dive deep into the rabbit hole that is consciousness through this great awakening, you see how much potential lies within you. And just as the Kabbalion states, the key is always within yourself. So that's why I highlighted these three figures, very prominent, very important in the space of witchcraft, wizardry, but for all the right reasons.
And now to talk about one of the most important warlocks in our human history, the good old Master Saint Germain. Junk, would you like to carry it away?
Actually, I'm going to pass the mic off to Clara.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that.
Just want to say that's a beautiful photo.
Clara, whenever you're ready.
You are muted, by the way.
Oh, she just unmuted herself. You're good to go.
Yes, I would love to speak about Ascended Master Saint Germain, understanding that he is the avatar of the age of Aquarius, which is the age that we are entering just now. And Ascended Master Saint Germain has several incarnations on this planet. The most well known, of course, is as the Comte of Saint Germain, because he, in my understanding, reached a very high state of evolution during that lifetime, including the ability to understand and practice alchemy, understand and practice how to extend lifespan, understand and practice how to live on this planet without the need of eating or drinking, as many other abilities that he developed. And there's a lot of mystery surrounding that incarnation of Ascended Master Saint Germain, including the fact that no one knows where is his grave, because no one knows for real that he was buried or even died. So for me, the most amazing memory of this incarnation of Saint Germain is the fact that he never aged. He was always looking 40 years of age. All the people surrounding Saint Germain reached the third age. Their hair went white, wrinkles, and Ascended Master Saint Germain in that incarnation was always looking young and healthy. That's, for me, truly reaching your mastery. And speaking about magic, from my perspective, is the ability to reach everything that, as a fractal of the Creator, you are capable of doing while incarnated on this planet. And of course, you can use those powers for negative purpose or use those powers for a positive purpose. And the choice is always ours, because the power is only one, and that power comes from the fact that you are a fractal of God. And with that understanding, you are capable of doing whatever you want. It's all about remembering who you are and reaching a level of development of your consciousness that gives you the faculty to reconnect with all your power as a creator being. You can call that magic if you want, but as a matter of fact, is being who you truly are.
Thank you for that, Clara. So now we're going to move into kind of more of an.
Oh wait, Scoop. There's still more to talk about here. Hold on.
Okay. Sorry.
So, as you heard with Clara, she mentioned alchemy, which is a very powerful mastering of the physical, as far as introducing your body to herbals or sunlight, etc. And so, as you've heard with Saint Germain, again, he didn't age. He found some secret of mute YouTube here, immortality, and from that came this understanding that there is this youthfulness that one can obtain while incarnate. And then off to the left, you might not know this, you might have heard it. It's the Philosopher's Stone, which was basically a legendary alchemical substance with magical properties. It was basically a ruby red stone that could be used to create, quote unquote, the elixir of life, which would make the drinker immortal. Or, on the other hand, transform any metal into pure gold. So it's fascinating to think that we have that element from ancient times, but it's also appearing, if anybody remembers, in the first Harry Potter that we showed on the first screen, the Philosopher's Stone, right?
But they changed the name to the Sorcerer's Stone.
You see what I'm saying? But it's the same thing. It's the exact same.
As well as probably one of my favorite, and I would say one of the most philosophical animes to ever be created, Full Metal Alchemist, that basically spends an entire series delving into the Philosopher's Stone's properties, how far you can take it, it kind of takes a dark spin on it, basically saying that they're created by human souls, but the general purpose and the general use and, the general basis lore of it is very true to, reality, which is fascinating to me that a anime cartoon is able to do that so well.
Yeah, and I would also say, sorry, Xenox, you want to go?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to chime in, since on the topic of elements, on a more fundamental level, in Wiccan philosophy, there are four main elements, and that is air, fire, water, and earth. Perhaps Saint Germain is using one or more combination of those for that topic. But just as a brief little 101 here, air is the first element, and that's associated with mind and intellectual capabilities. And earth is associated with stability in life, materialism in the physical world. Fire represents burning energy, passion, inspiration, creativity, etc. And water is all about flowing emotions, intuition, subconscious, and emotional aspects of love, femininity, etc. And what are the elements? But physical manifestations of that magical energy that flows freely through all of the universe, just here in the physical world. And they are those representations incarnate as air, fire, water, earth, etc., as we categorize them. You may have the floor.
No, that's actually a really good point. The elements are foundational in life. Everything about life is the elements. So, of course, those who figured out how to utilize them in the proper way could obtain something of the sort, or at least obtain the magic from them. But another element or perspective we should also take on quote unquote the elixir of life or alchemy in general is it's vibrational. That we have to see that if you, I mean, granted, let's throw yourself back into the 1600s. If you, for some reason, happen to stumble upon a certain vibration, whether it's a musical instrument, whether it's you hitting something accidentally, or whatever the conditions, and you saw that it benefited you and you started to use it over and over again, that would be considered magic to the ongoing perceiver. It would be that presence that would help you kind of accelerate your stability or healing, etc. And again, everything has a frequency, so we can't forget that. It's all around us. And also, some other really quick things I wanted to tap into were there were different means of immortality. There were different natural holistic substances that would provide the same desired effect. One of which was the Siberian ligonberry, which is kind of, it's from the cedar and pine trees, but they said that it possessed very strong healing powers. And if you sprinkled this liquid into your drink, it would grant them quote unquote immortality. So that's just one of the cases. Another one is mistletoe. So what we're seeing is themes of nature becoming infused within society and people capitalizing on those. So I'd just like to say that, thank you, Xenox, thank you, Scoob, for kind of bringing awareness to the fact that the elements were heavily used. But I think magic, in essence, is a returning to the most natural part of our humanity, which is our existence on this planet. And, of course, we know by now, and I hope everybody knows this, is that you are an infinite being of light, and that this human existence is a temporary stop for your experience here on Earth. Now, with that being said, that stop is going to provide you many, many different encounters, many things to learn. So why not learn about the universe through nature and vice versa? So yeah, absolutely. And who knows if alchemy in the form of generating immortality is obtainable by the common man, but it has been seen in the past, and we have to lend some credibility to that.
Absolutely.
Can I say something scientific that relates to him really quick?
Go for it.
You know how when you want to make some kind of metal pure, like silver or something like that, there's silver colloidide liquid or something like that. But when you use electrolysis, it turns the liquid in the metal to start creating it. Have you seen the pictures, right? It looks kind of like almost like a raw material. Have you guys seen this stuff?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So, yeah, you can break down nasty silver into a liquid form and then use electrolysis to grow it back into the purest form. And maybe this is something that he was using, that it wasn't a metal liquid, but it was something that he used to grow a crystal that was healing in the water, since he didn't eat or whatever. I don't know. It's just really weird if you see a video like that. And kind of, it's like growing rock candy in a mason jar, kind of, but just a much more scientific way. It's just something I was thinking about.
So why are the Salem witch trials so important to the phenomena of witch and warlock lore? So from what I understand, and it's very brief, I'm just full disclosure, very brief. From what I understand, during this during the time of the mid 1600s, there was a group of people, mainly women, gathering together to form different covens, different groups, and they were practicing such acts that we were talking about, that we've been talking about the entire evening. I wouldn't say they were necessarily evil intent. I would say this was a very zealous religious attempt to just start hanging and burning people, anybody that they could who they thought practiced dark magic, even if they weren't really doing it. If they thought they were just pretty much executed. There was no trial. There was no really giving them any chance to try and defend themselves. It was just, oh, you're a witch? Off with your head. Junk, do you want to continue?
Yeah. So, just as Scuba said, this was basically a condemnation by organized religion on society for things that they could not comprehend or understand, which is kind of contradictory if you think about it with Jesus and the miracles, etc. Everything that they were fighting for, they were almost like saying only that person could do it, nobody else, and it seems very exclusive. But yeah, again, Salem witch trials. This was 1692, so a lot of misunderstanding back then, hyper religious kind of society. But it was just fascinating to see how this kind of panned out, because from what we've been talking about, again, in this point of time, and this is exclusive to Salem, Massachusetts, for the moment. Basically, there was a hysteria in which 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, and in total, 20 were killed during the entire hysteria. But it gets a lot worse. I think death was probably the easy way out in this. And what's interesting is that it's fascinating because some of these witches, quote unquote, were more so just in tune with their own self-awareness. So we're talking about women who are thinking, who are living, who are breathing, just saying, what is life, taking time outdoors, etc., like that. That'd be considered out of the normal, against the status quo, again, flagging them for this witch hunt. And then there would also be ones that were actually more demonic. So there was a mix. I wouldn't say that this was complete, hocus pocus, but it's more so that this happened for a reason, and that a lot of people got caught in the crossfire. And it's just sad because, this isn't just a case of 200 women, right? We're talking about, most of these accused witches were middle-aged, elderly women or men, and basically through this, they were sentenced to execution. And this is where it gets really dreary. I'm not sure a lot of people know this fact, but the youngest that was accused and arrested was 4 years old, and the oldest was 80. And she was basically she was executed. The 4-year-old wasn't. But I have to tell you that when you were convicted, right, they sent you to something that was known as the witch jail, or old witch gaol, how they used to spell it, which is basically just a dungeon. And prisoners were kept in these like deplorable conditions in small cells that were often standing room only. Like, there wasn't any room to move. And the prisoners were tortured, starved, exposed to the inhumane conditions, and deprived of water. And then on top of all of that, they had the audacity to charge them for their food, their handcuffs, and execution. So it's a complete mockery. But again, in the unconscious state of the collective at that moment, especially within the vast majority, these things would be considered normal. It'd be like, yes, we have to kill these people because they go against everything we believe, to that degree. But another thing too that kind of falls under misconception is that there really wasn't any witch burned at the stake. It was all hangings. Um, I think the whole idea of witch burning at the stake was more so a fear-based control system that spread, quote unquote, like like wildfire, right? Like that was the motive, is to send these witches back to hell, so you have the personification of hellfire. And but realistically, they were all just hung, and it was, on display, and they would kind of follow the pirate charade in which they would hang them in front of town for all them to see, to kind of deter any witchcraft from occurring any longer. And it was just craziness. It was chaos. And so,
There's a lot of book burning too.
yes, I mean, again, you could put that back into it, and then all the lost history. But um, it was just tough. It was a really, really hard time in human history. And not, most of the people who did die probably died, without reason. And they would do stupid things like put them on a half-baked trial and make them recite passages of the Bible by memory, and that they thought that the devil would push against this, which is just, ludicrous. But it's fascinating to see that everything that happened in this way was not only inspired by practical witchcraft, but I was doing some research and I found this really fascinating rabbit hole, which is that there was this thing that some of them they contracted a disease from the rye bread, which basically caused compulsions, muscle spasms, delusions, sensation of crawling under the skin, and gangrene in some extremities. So there's the green lore. That's why you think witches are green. That's from that, which really connected a lot of dots for me. But it's basically that in Salem, mostly of these young girls, their immune systems hadn't fully developed. So they would be extremely susceptible to disease. And especially if it's something where you wouldn't even think to consider the food supply to be the culprit. I definitely think that plays a role in it, the rotten rye. Yeah.
Before we move on, does anybody else want to add some things onto Salem?
That's what I heard is the Inquisition, and the Catholic Church was doing that, so that was the cabal. They didn't want these people, some of them was healers, and they didn't want to heal people and to spread the knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And we had very famous healers back in the days. They called Bogomils. And then they went to France and they killed them all. And there was some healers, they was doing meditation and stuff like that. Later they called them Catars.
Okay.
Yeah, they was very famous.
Qatar.
Frank,
And
you
I
want
want
to?
to say some stuff. Can I have the phone a minute?
Yeah, go for it.
Excuse me, Diana. So I want to give you guys some tips that you could use to, on a daily routine, giving you became some special person to everyone else that you're living with. So if we're having some trouble or we're gonna have to switch to survival mode, you all guys need to understand that you will find your lighthouses that will keep you on a safe space. So something you could do also with this magic that is given in the practical real-day communication, that is interesting and giving to something or someone else. So writing letters of depth to that world that you are switching off is you guys can have a handwriting letter that all things that you don't appreciate that's happening. So in the harvest of the souls, that I have some friends that do entertainment, and there's a lot of people consuming on that ritual that has a lot of people. Now in the chat room, we are 11 or 10, I don't know, but we are all doing, having a communication with an interesting. So if you have to understand how they harvest that energy to use, we all know there is something that we have to understand or have to be aware when we are recitals or participating online. We have a lot of people doing a lot of rituals in gatherings with people online in a certain hour, and it's not like they're allowed to, like in this chat room. A shout out to Scuba for ditching those PT headphones, headpieces that were so off the track. Because we have to know that that plant that they want to harvest and use, because it's alive, we have a specific amount of wealth for each of anyone who really are in this moment of time. So, on your daily routine activities, please keep it together. Hatred is something that is a current issue, and they are using people that are not themselves. So you have to be cautious and be aware and having to understand that we're not giving yourself on a war. And those 7 that you have to understand, you could use it, the Tesla key, the 369, that drawing you guys publish, John DNA publish, is a combination of protons or, well, I don't know, guys, but have in mind that it's a regular routine that you're giving yourself a trust bond, and you have to understand that those boys that have you, that are the moments that people are living. You are one step ahead. So that's all. Sorry.
No, thank you so much, Frank. Very much appreciated. You delved into a lot of deep topics there. So moving on to the next question of the night. Is there such a... So one of the big things that I want to push forward is that in the main, I would say there are 3 main levels to, this whole witch warlock idea in the modern day. The first level we talked about, which is the Wiccan side, which is, more benevolent, focused on herbs, having a relationship with Mother Gaia, kind of a trendy thing nowadays. You have the witch, where they're practicing dark magic, maybe taking, psychedelics to do interesting things, or, learning potions. But then there's a third angle, and that is what I would like to call elitist dark magic, which I would say is a little bit, and when I mean a little bit, I mean a lot darker. Whereas you have the good stuff, the stuff that, we practice on a daily basis. And I'd say one of the number one method to, I would say, a modern day benevolent witch is what Xenox said very early on in this conversation, which is using the method of Reiki, or being a herbalist, or, being aware of the intention that you're setting in the magic that you're putting forth. Because, at the end of the day, if you really think about it, we are all witches, warlocks, magicians, masters of energy. We are just most of the time unconsciously aware of it. We have no idea that we're doing it, but in some sense, we do know that we're doing it. We just can't put an explanation for it. It is a sense science that you don't understand. Junk, would you like to talk about some benevolent witches?
Yeah, of course. Benevolent witches, otherwise known as green witches, these are the ones with a pure and positive intention, as you stated, and they tend to dive directly into herbology, more so kind of holistic means of conjuring magic. This has to do a lot with nature. So they gather ingredients, they have little ceremonies, altars, rituals, but it has no distortion. They're doing it, and I believe Dylan said this a little bit earlier, but they're doing it to benefit their community, benefit themselves in a very positive, peaceful way, and others. And so, witches are real. I think if this conversation has proved anything, is that witches are real, but there's two sides of the coin. And we've talked enough out of the dark. So now it's about embracing the light and seeing that, benevolence is more so creatorship. I consider the white magician a builder, not a destroyer. And so it's basically seeking to liberate rather than dominate everything around them. And with that being said, we're talking about warlocks, witches, magicians, etc. This is all under the same umbrella, but there is a very peaceful light-endedness to this conversation in which they exist all around you. They could be down your cul-de-sac. They could be on TV. You never know who you're talking to because there's many things that go beyond behind closed doors. And these are the ones that we need to remain very neutral with, and not necessarily condone them under the label of witch, because witch in itself has a derogatory term attached to it and fixed where you think it's a bad thing, but witches aren't a bad thing. It's just about those who have learned to master energy and who are actively practicing that facet. So I haven't personally met any witches myself, but I've definitely read about them, and they're all online. I'm sure you can find one. And if you want to be a witch, go for it. I mean, I'm not discrediting you. It's all about how you want your human experience to play out. But there is nothing wrong about going outside, grounding with nature, gathering a few pine cones, lighting a candle at home, and just setting positive, peaceful intentions in meditation. That, saging, as Enoch said earlier, that's another form of witchcraft, quote unquote. It's just about purification and cleansing, I think, of the physical body and the environmental spaces that they surround themselves in. So very neutral, very positive, and I'm glad they exist because we need a balance.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was our second episode in our Halloween theme this month. So before we finish off the night, I have a few announcements to give off. One of them being, I made a post about it. Don't know if people read it. I know some people did, some people didn't, but I'm officially announcing it here. For the first time ever in New Templars, we are having a costume contest for this month. Go all out, have fun. Don't spend too much, but just have fun with it. I'm going to make an official post with a nice flyer and some extra basic information. But in that post, just comment your picture and we will count that as a submission. I am basically counted as a void since I am dressing up pretty much every week throughout the month. Last week, I was the anonymous guy. This week, I'm Harry Potter. Next week, I will be a ghost. And then for the final week, I will be a New Templar Knight. So get creative, have fun. Junk, are there any words that you want to say?
Yeah, no limits. Again, you're going to see we curated this to where you can have a group photo, couples, costume, etc. Just whatever it is. Cheap isn't bad. Just realize that Scuba is the judge. He's the headmaster of Gryffindor right there. Have fun with it. This is going to be really cool. This is a great way to share your face, share your personality and your creativity. I myself am participating. I'll probably be the first submission. So if you want to get inspiration, you can go check that out. But we are just so excited to keep this going. And if you want to be officially crowned the very first winner of the costume contest, go for it. Submit. You have till the 25th?
Yes,
Is that right?
25th. And not only will the winner get a shout out, but you will also get a purchased gift item from me from DSMP Store.
We can contribute 1 new Templars enamel pin to this cause.
Right on.
Yeah, so you can probably add that to their order because I want to get them a Palladian disc because I really like them and I feel like that I want to get those kind of sold for you, and if I have to put my own money out there for somebody else, I have no issues doing that because it is my favorite thing on your store.
Well, I just today sent Sherry Lynn a check for $3,600. And we're getting our biggest Palladian disc order ever with custom designs, and some are restocks of the designs that are already there. But yeah, those are amazing tools. I'm actually watching a video of Sherry Lynn. Well, I'm in the middle of it before I came in here, that she just did a new interview on YouTube that I'm checking out. And I'll share that to New Templar so you guys can see it. But yeah, I'm excited for the costume contest. I like that idea.
Very cool. All right. So everybody, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much for coming. And as always, we wish you a wonderful evening. Always keep on seeking. And New Templars!
New Templars.